And it was funny. The reason they picked me is like they gave me the internship before grades came out. That's pretty much the only reason I got it. But they said the reason after I like talked to them, they said, no, actually the reason that we picked you is we saw that you were a Jungle Cruise skipper at Disneyland.
Okay, what's up? Welcome back. Here with one of my, mentor sales idols. So when I started off at Moxie, Neal Rummler, you were always at the top of the leaderboards for like first 3 or 4 years. You were like the top guy or in the top guys and recruiting the big teams and doing cool things. And so it was really cool. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think we filmed both of our first ever podcast episodes together at Moxie.
Yeah.
With Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, that was my first ever time doing a podcast. And that was all of our firsts. Not Travis's first. You'd done other ones before that.
Yeah, I've done one other podcast, but yeah, for Moxie, that was the first one.
First ever episode ever filmed. So it's kind of fun to be back, 4 years later.
Yeah.
Full circle. So, but yeah, like it's kind of seeing your trajectory on life is like go from killing it door to door, law school to everything you're doing now has been super cool. But I feel like I've heard you talk so much about being stressed and like going through the public school system. I'd just love to hear more about your journey.
Yeah. So I grew up in Southern California. I went to a pretty good high school, Cypress High, and my parents pushed me to take AP classes, honors classes. And I was kind of conditioned that, hey, if you don't get a 4.0, you don't get straight A's, you're not going to be successful. And so I put this immense amount of pressure on myself to succeed. And I was so stressed out. I remember one time I had a math test for pre-calculus and I woke up in the middle of the night, was sleepwalking. And I walked into my parents' room and I was like, I have to get an A on this test. Otherwise I'm going to get a B in this class. And they're like, it's okay, Neal, go back to bed. You're okay. And that's how stressed I was because I was like, man, if I don't get a 4.0, I'm not going to get into BYU. I'm not going to find a wife. I'm screwed. I put so much pressure and I just look back on all that and I laugh because it's just dude, I wish I could go back to high school, Neal, and be like, hey, Betty, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That B you got on that test, it's going to be all right. You
could just get a high school diploma and you'll probably be in the same place you are in the future.
I mean, yeah, look, in hindsight, it's it really is more about who you know, not what you know, and just having drive.
Well, I think to play devil's advocate with it is I don't think you create someone like you without, I think rather than getting the A is the test of being at the top and being a top performer in whatever you're doing. And that's what I think is really the lesson is whether it's AP calculus or something else, you learned how to be a top performer because statistically it's supposed to be the top 10% or less get A's in the class, right?
Yeah, something like
that.
Yeah.
So you're I need to be a top 10%, top 1% even performer if I want to get the results in life that I want. And you've translated that through being that type of system through every single company or whatever thing you've done to ultimately have gotten to now you own your own company and business that's doing it. That I'm I don't know if you can form a Neal without going and doing everything exactly how you did it.
I would agree with that. And so I've studied what motivates us as human beings. And one of them is fear of failure, fear of loss. That definitely was my motivator in high school. But you're right. It's that stress that I underwent, it definitely prepared me for harder tasks in the future because I was just I would compare whatever I was doing to maybe a previous challenge. And I'm just oh, okay, I got this. I've already been there. So the material that I was learning, was it actually practical? Did I need to learn a lot of that stuff? No, but the lessons that it taught me were very valuable later in life for sure.
Well, and the work ethic and the controlling the controllables. And I think the mental fortitude to be able to take a topic and then master it and then become good at it. And then going into law school. So I don't know. I have this weird thing where I've kind of liked politics forever. And so when I got into school, my initial thing was, I was oh, I want to be in politics and somehow, but I was I don't know if I want to like read and write all the
Yeah.
time. I'm good at both of those. Like on my ACT, highest things were reading and writing, but I was like, I don't know if I want to just do that full time as a job, researching things and
Mhm.
being a lawyer. I thought you had to be in politics, you had to be a lawyer. So I got into political science, loved my political science class, the intro to it, but I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. So I actually, funny enough, changed to be an English major
Yeah.
and then became a marketing major. But law school is not easy. So like what made you kind of when did you decide to do that?
Mhm.
And like what was the thought process like going from you're killing it in pest control and you're in school and just seeing it through all the way to the end?
So my career trajectory it started in high school where I was looking at what I was good at and what I was best at was writing, communication. I wasn't as good in math and science, and so I took an AP chemistry class. I didn't do too hot in that, and so I was like, okay, med school, probably not going to be a doctor, but I was killing it in my history classes, my English classes. I was getting the top scores on all the papers. So I was just like, okay, well, this is what I'm good at. Like, what makes the most, if with somebody that's good at writing, and it was like, okay, yeah, let's become an attorney because those are the people that need to know how to write and communicate effectively. But it's funny because the thought never crossed my mind ever to start a business. Like they don't teach you that in school. At least in my high school, they didn't teach me that like, hey, the people that actually make the most money and they're like the most financially free and successful are the people that get into sales and start their own companies. And I wish somebody had told me that because I was like, well, you need to be good at communicating as a professional salesperson, as a business owner. You also need to write well and be able to persuade. Like, I think I could have gotten there sooner. It had somebody mentored me when I was younger.
Well, 100%. Like my high school, we had our financial lit class
Hmm.
and we took this big national test that was the most impossible test. And if you got an A above a 90 on that test, you got an automatic A in the class. And I did. And I
Nice.
was like, not that I'm smart, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was like, when I was taking the test, reading the questions, I was like, wait, are these trick questions?
Yeah.
Because they were so easy that the fact that people didn't get an A was, at the time, I was concerned as like a 17-year-old or 16-year-old, but now I'm even more concerned because it's like literally that financial lit class virtually taught me nothing.
Hmm.
And it's not like I knew everything about finances at 17. I knew nothing. I
Yeah.
basically knew my mom did Dave Ramsey and loves Dave Ramsey's stuff that you just pretty much save more than you spend and you pay off debts and you buy investments like stocks and houses.
Yeah.
That's that was like my baseline knowledge, and which I guess was a lot for a high school kid, but we didn't take it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like my financial lit class teacher would just go over what movies were the most popular that week and doing the best in the box office for like the first 15, 20 minutes of class. And so I think you're completely right that like the jobs that are focused on in the public school system is they feel like if you have like a society that's all controlled, like how are you going to contribute to society? Where I see business owners actually as a top contributors because they're providing a service that's needed, and the
Mhm.
businesses that succeed and stay in business are the ones that people want and like. And so
Yeah.
you're providing something to the community, but you're also able to make a really great lifestyle for yourself.
That's 100% true. Yes.
So as you've gone on from like, what made you decide to, so you graduated from law school and were like, yeah, I'm done with this. Like that's a
Yeah.
lot of school and a
Yeah.
lot, like I would see that as a big decision. What ultimately triggered your decision to be done with it?
So it was the way law school is structured is your entire career's prospects are determined on your first semester grades, and
What do
that
you
sounds
mean?
crazy. So it's like what happens. The way law school's set up is you're graded on a bell curve, and so most people end up in the middle. There's very very few people that can even statistically get an A in the class, but the ones that are getting the best jobs in the private sector, you have to be in the top third. And if you want to be a shoe in, you have to be in the top 10%. I had a class of 130 students, so only 13 people were getting those top law firm jobs, and that was ultimately why I went to law school was because I was thinking, oh yeah, for sure, I'll be in the top 10%, and yeah, I'll be making six figures right out of law school. What I didn't realize is a lot of people, really, really smart people, go to BYU Law because they're going there purely because of the tuition. It's so cheap. So people that got into Harvard and these top tier law schools came to BYU, and I was competing against those people. So all of a sudden, I'm the dumb one in the class. Like I'm the one getting skewered by the professors when I'm getting questioned, and it's just like that was very humbling because I was always used to being, one of the best. And to get into BYU law, I was in the top 10% of my undergrad class. I had a 3.87 GPA, did well on the standardized tests and everything. And then I get into that setting and I'm just like, oh man, I'm an idiot. So, I got an internship that first summer with a mid-sized firm and up in Salt Lake. It was called Christensen and Jensen. And it was funny. The reason they picked me is they gave me the internship before grades came out. That's pretty much the only reason I got it. But they said the reason after I like talked to them, they said, no, actually the reason that we picked you is we saw that you were a Jungle Cruise skipper at Disneyland, and they said that jumped out on your resume. And it's definitely a conversation starter. They're like, yeah, we want this guy because he's got a personality. Because they're used to just getting robots as interns, and so that kind of got my foot in the door. And I was asking attorneys at the time. I was like, hey, what do you like about your job, man? I'd come in and they were like in their early 30s and they would like grimace and then like say, they get really like panicky. I learned something new every day. It's very, very intellectually stimulating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, is that the best you can come up with? Like, I could clearly see they weren't passionate about it and they were kind of just stuck because they probably had a lot of student debt, and so it was a good salary, and so they're kind of just stuck. They couldn't really leave or afford to leave, or they were too scared to leave. And so once I had a couple of those experiences, I knew I was like, dude, I can't do this for 40 years of just sitting behind a computer, researching, writing papers. That's when I actually learned what attorneys do on a day-to-day basis. And so it was at that point when I was like, okay, I'm not going to even have a chance to get a job like that unless I start a little bit lower on the rung as like a public defender or a prosecutor. And I looked at the salaries of what I could expect there, and I was like, 50 grand for a prosecutor, like, that's
I've
just
made that
not.
before in a few
Yeah, yeah.
weeks.
I'm like, that's not worth it. Like, it's not worth it. I don't want to backtrack here to eventually make more money. And then, attorneys, if you talk to attorneys now, most of them hate their jobs.
Mhm.
I would say like 80-90% do not like what they do. And if they say they do, they're either lying or, disguise. Like, it's a half truth. There's certain aspects of the job they like, but they would prefer to get out if they could. And so after just a collection of all that knowledge and seeing the potential in sales, that was what ultimately made me decide to just go back into what I was good at.
Well, I think everyone thinks they're gonna have like the suits
Uh-huh.
experience
Yeah,
where
it's
they like
nothing
get
like
in and
that.
they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be like B. Harvey Specter,
Yeah.
sticking it to whoever, and like I'm gonna have all this bullpen of junior, whatever they're called, lawyers, attorneys, whatever, and they're gonna do all the hard work, but it's hard all the way through. But what's funny is I think you have a lot more Harvey Specter moments, and you can actually kind of embody that person you want to be like on Suits, whether you're more of like whatever. We're not going to get too far into
I'm
Suits.
curious what you think those Harvey Specter moments are.
Well, I think like everyone likes to have like, at least with me, when you close a deal and you're like
Mhm.
selling somebody and you're able to
Mhm.
resonate with them, and when you get that like wavelength where you're just like vibing with the prospect and you go all the way through and then you finish the deal and like maybe they come up with an objection and you just fire back and it's so smooth and everything just goes
Okay, I see what you're
great.
saying. Yeah.
I think you have those moments, and it's like they see in Suits where like as a lawyer you get that when you're in front of the jury or whatever, or proving
That's
whatever
so
thing.
rare though. It's like 1-2% of cases actually go to trial. And like, most attorneys, if I was an attorney in Utah, guess what I'd be doing? Divorces and slip and falls and like, accidents, car accidents, stuff like that. That's what's in demand. And
Personal injury.
yeah, that kind of stuff. And so I get a lot more fulfillment in what I do now because I'm coaching guys and I'm taking people that maybe have some villains in their mind of them, and I'm helping them overcome those. And it's just like, hey, dude, you're kind of a victim. You're just, it's always the blame game of why you're not succeeding. Like, why are you? And we get into that and we discover that it's because of an experience they had later in life. And so it's like, it's fun to kind of wear the therapist hat. And then sometimes I gotta, drop the hammer a little bit. And with certain guys, it's fun to see how to motivate each individual. And some of them, it's you got to draw a hard line. Some of them need a little more hand holding, and but seeing that growth and progression in them as a person, but also as a salesperson, and seeing that success, and then also seeing the money come in for them, it's really rewarding doing that.
Well, and how do you even identify? I think that's such a hard thing is to pick out someone who will actually be good.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many personality types and so many people. I mean, I've seen so many people be successful at sales, and you're like, these guys virtually have nothing in common. So, like, what do you look for?
So I don't hire somebody unless they have door-to-door experience. I tried hiring from the corporate sphere, but they're just too soft. Like if I were to summarize, like I know there's killers out there that are doing tech sales, but for the most part, like I've just found that's a good filter for me is like if they've done door-to-door and they've been successful at it, they're going to appreciate the warm lead that I'm giving them so much more, and it's going to be a layup for them as opposed to somebody that doesn't have that background. Just because it doesn't get harder than door to door. It's brutal. I mean, maybe cold calling on the phone, but yeah, door to door is just very challenging. And if somebody's able to go through that fiery furnace, they're going to be successful. So that's number one. And I'd say number two, somebody that you have to have the drive, and a lot of the times drive comes from adversity in their life. So if they've gone through a challenge, like I've seen kids go through like a parents go through a nasty divorce. They some type of adversity in their while they were growing up is huge, and then if they're disagreeable, so it's top salespeople are usually a little cocky and they'll push back on something. They're not just yes people, and so in an interview or something, I'll challenge them on a certain question, and if they push back, I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's gonna be good.
What are some of these questions you might ask?
I haven't ever.
I mean, I think this is true, but I've never summed it up this way. This is
so
interesting.
it's you got to be careful, right? It depends on how well you know them.
Yeah.
And so if usually I'm very particular about who I hire now, so it's kind of like a club where somebody has to vouch before they talk to me. But I might throw something out and use a little bit of reverse psychology where I say, yeah, so one of the problems that I see happening with some of the guys that get on is they're used to making good money, but not great money. But when they come and work with me, they start getting these huge checks coming in. Some of them are, over 10,000. Some of them are even 20,000 every 2 weeks. And what I see happen a lot of times is they see that money coming in so quickly, they just get a little complacent. And I can't have that in my culture, just because if they see a top producer suddenly take his foot off the gas, everyone thinks it's okay to take their foot off the gas. So tell me why that's not going to happen to you. So that would be an example of a challenge, or I'm like flipping it on them a little bit, where it's like I'm pitching a benefit as a concern. And they're just like, whoa, no, I'm not going to be complacent. Of course, they're always going to push back, like if they're going to be good. Everyone always has an answer, but some people have better answers than others about why that's not going to happen.
So. That's a good question. Yeah. I might be like, well, maybe I will get complacent and start wanting to do something else. To be brutally honest with you, Neal, I'd probably get another business idea and try to do this part-time and do something else.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be a good candidate.
Yeah, nobody's going to say that.
I probably would. And you'd be like, yeah, probably not working with you, Ned.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you've got a lot of good things going.
That's funny, though. I love that, because I think having that mindset, and this is the thing that's frustrating. So working with door-to-door reps, you're so right. Like, they're not agreeable. They're disagreeable a lot. And especially the really good ones, they all have this thing that I think is essential, but it's the Mamba mentality, where it's like they think they're the greatest thing since, I don't know, toaster strudel. And they'll push back and they'll want whatever thing they want. And it's like this convincing game back and forth where everyone's selling each other. And my wife hates it because she's like, yeah, I know when you guys are going into sales mode. I see both of you and you guys get your eye contact and everyone's like doing their head nods. And then I'm like, it's kind of funny, but I think that's what makes everyone rise to the top is you're around top performers constantly. And when you're working with top performers, everyone's pushing each other, whether on purpose through metrics. But I think at the top levels, it's not even through metrics anymore. Everyone knows everybody can sell. It's not about that. It's about just everyone's competing constantly and driving everyone to be better. And I don't even think it's like a keeping up with the Joneses thing. I think it's like everyone that makes it has this innate desire to be great and feels that. And it's like not about the money. It's not about whatever it is. At least it isn't for me. it just turns into something that's so much more than that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say I what I tell the guys is like don't think about the money when you go out to perform. Think of it like a game, a sport, or just like, hey, I want to be the best that I can be. And that's what it turns into. It's like when I would go out and sell or shadow guys, we get 10 appointments in a day. If I only sold two, I'm upset. I am really not happy. And I tell guys, I'm like, that's how you should feel when you sell two. You're like, dude, I had 10 opportunities and I only closed 20%. That's pathetic. You should be disgusted with yourself. And that's kind of what the culture turns into, where it's just like, hey, you're not trying to be good because you're trying to make more money. It's just you want to be the best. You hate the thought of being mediocre and not living up to your potential. So that's the culture that I try to create. And when guys have that mindset, they're not chasing the dollar anymore. They're like, okay, how I'm actually helping people here. Let's just do it the best that I can, and the results follow when you have that mindset.
Well, I love like I've never actually really. I mean, I guess I have, but not quite how you're putting it. It's like you make it like a sport, like with your batting average, for example. I'm not a big baseball guy, but if
Mm.
you're the guy batting below 200, which is like below like what is that like 2% or
Yeah,
20% or
yeah,
whatever it is, you you see that on the MLB screens, and you're like, oh, this guy's only hitting 180. That's that sucks, or
yeah.
160, and but then you see the guy comes up that's batting like 300, and you're like, dude, this guy's he's getting on base for sure. But no one wants to be that like bottom tier performer, and so I think naturally there's some ounce of pride and ego that's healthy and sometimes unhealthy that will drive you to hit those higher levels and tiers. So like I loved what you were saying. Like door to door isn't easy. I think it's the quickest, fastest way that you can make yourself into something, not just from the finances, but from like you were saying, the adversity and skills that you
Mhm.
learn. But like hard times are gonna pop up. It's not like it's gleeful and like, hey, you're going and closing doors every day, and you might have days where you sell zero. And depending on the industry, you might have a lot of days where you sell zero. What keeps you motivated or able to accomplish those hurdles as they come?
So, are you asking in general or me personally?
You personally, because
So, yeah,
I've only seen you sell big numbers, but I'm
yeah.
assuming there are days where you're like
So,
get kicked in the
so
teeth.
this is actually something I'm pretty proud of. Over the 10 years that I knocked doors, I never once bageled. I always sold at least one.
That's
And
impressive.
one of those days, like it would literally was the last door I knocked at like 9:30. It was pitch black. And the only reason I sold that guy is because nobody had ever talked to him before. He had a job where he got home super late. And so that was a lesson and something we can talk about maybe in a different podcast, but it's just like I didn't quit. And and because of that, I got a sale finally. So I would say initially for me, I had a lot of pressure to succeed because I had just gotten married. So my dad, my and a lot of members of my family were kind of laughing at me and just like not laughing, but maybe just like very skeptical. They were just like, "Are you really going to make like you really think you're going to make money knocking doors selling pest control?" Just because it sounds preposterous. If like to somebody that doesn't know about summer sales, it sounds crazy. Like, oh, my son's gonna go do this thing that I've never heard of. Like, and so I had a chip on my shoulder to like prove that wrong and just be like, no, I'm gonna show that I'm gonna be a good provider. I'm gonna be able to succeed. And so that pressure definitely pushed me. And then yeah, just I'm very competitive by nature. That's my other motivator is competition tied to fear of loss. It's like I know I can do it. It's just I hate to lose, and so that being in that competitive environment was the other thing that pushed me and drove me.
Is there anything that you'd reflect on, like I don't know, like when you're like challenging on, like having a challenging time that would help you like kick it to the next gear or keep going?
Are you talking about like in my time in door
Yeah,
to
and door to
door?
door, yeah, or in general.
So if I ever was having a rough day, like initially, I would I was I would play the blame game, right? Because it's like we all have egos, and
Uh-huh.
that was the immature me, where it was like, oh, the reason I wasn't selling today was because it was overknocked, or like I stayed in the area too long. There was always an excuse, and then finally, Garrett Davis pulled me aside one time where I was saying all these negative things in front of the team, and he's like, hey man, do you think that's the best things to be saying in front of your team? It's like, what are you teaching them when they hear you say all those things, right? You're teaching them that if they're not successful, it's not because of them. It's because of an external factor. You're being a victim. And so that was kind of a turning point for me or in leadership where I was like, okay, yes, I need to stop complaining and take ownership for my success. Because if I play the blame game and I'm the victim, all my other guys are going to be the same exact way. They're just going to follow my example, and that's not how you lead. You lead by just getting it done, figuring it out, going out and and changing, adapting, overcoming the adversity.
Well, I think that's completely true. I think I like reflect back and people will laugh at this because I'm just like super vain, I guess. But like some of my favorite moments of door to door, I can't remember how many I sold, but I just remember the days where I'm like working hard and I'm like feeling successful. Like I have sold
Hmm.
a lot of accounts that day, but you have like my arm hairs like turning like have turned to like gold now
Yeah,
because of like the sun. I've been out in the sun for
yeah.
so long. The sweat's dripping down your arms. You're knocking that next door and you're like, dude, I'm freaking making it happen. And like I think some of those hard days I can reflect back on is like I could be doing anything else right now. Like I know like I'm a top performer in anything that I do, but like right now I'm choosing to be here and do this and take my success into my own hands. And I have this opportunity where I can go make whatever $1,000 to $5,000 today selling pest control, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And it's like, there's like, I think it's Eric Thomas who's like, pain, you're already in the moment. Might as well make something of it. Whereas like I'm already out here. Like
Yeah.
I'm in the neighborhood. It's hot. It's whatever. My arms are glistening and I love it. And it already is hard. So like why not get the maximum amount of benefit from
Mhm.
being out here? Like I'm already across the country. I'm already not with my wife because I left my wife at home most of the time for the summer. And I'd be like, I'm already here with just my team. Like I'm on the doors. I have my phone turned off so people can't blow up my phone. Like time to do it. And like, why not have the most max benefit possible? And I think like, I don't know, I find a lot of joy and accomplishment from when I'm like, feel like I've hit my a limit and I'm like, no, I can do this. I can push back. And I feel like I've put on that extra limit where I'm like kicking into that next gear. And I'm like, dude, I'm doing things that most people will never do. And I just feel like another sense of like, I don't know, like when people are running a marathon and they get that like second, third, fourth wind and it's like, okay. And then it sucks kind of mile 20, but whatever. You know what I mean though?
Yeah.
And I think that's always been a big driving factor. And that's what I love about door to door. You take these people, most of the time they're young, like right after their mission, like 21, 18 to 22, 3, and you see them as like these young kids. And then pretty soon after like 2, 3, 4 years, you see them mold into like almost someone completely different. And that's for me is the best part about being involved in the door to door industry.
I agree. Yes, the growth that you witness is fun. It's fun to watch because in today's day and age, fewer and fewer kids are doing hard things, and any young hustler that has that drive is going to have such an advantage. I'm speaking to like the Zoomers and Generation Alpha. It's like if they go out and do door to door, and I would make the argument that that is a better education than a 4 year degree. Like I
It was
would
better than mine.
I will die on that hill, right? It's like because it's like you learn so many lessons. You have to think quickly, be quick witted. Like you never know who's gonna come out that door. Are they gonna be nice? Are they gonna be hostile? Like you have to diffuse the situation, or get them to give you the time of day and attention in a very short time frame. Like we're talking like 7 to 15 seconds is your time to make a first impression. And so when you're doing that hundreds of times a day, sometimes for years, you're going to become a master at communication, and that's what's going to separate young people that are going to be truly wealthy, and then just the people who are average. It's the people who can communicate effectively because I don't know if you've interacted with some young people recently, they can't even make eye contact. They're just
Mhm.
like looking all around, and it's just like I feel so bad for them because it's not their fault. It's like they're growing up in a world of smartphones and social media, and it's like there's talks now of banning social media. And I think I was watching this reel. I can't remember who it was, but it was a doctor, and she said I would rather my kids smoke cigarettes than be on social media. And I was like, what? You got to be kidding me. Are you serious? Like it's that bad? Really? And that's what's hurting the young people, the up and coming generations is they're losing those communication skills because of social media. And it's like if you can learn how to communicate, if you can learn how to adapt and really read people, persuade people, you're going to get what you want in life.
Well, and you even see things coming out now, like with AI, the amount of like labor jobs that can be taken over by a computer is so many.
Mhm.
So the ones that are really going to succeed, is this going to really separate the wheat from the chaff? Is that how the saying goes?
Wheat and tares.
Whatever, yeah. It's going to separate all the whatever from whatever. But like the winners from the losers. And what I mean by that is the ones that can communicate effectively and the ones that can really take control over themselves and their environments and use whatever tools that are at their disposal are going to be way better off than the ones that are just not no one's going to hire them, like, or they're not going to go and self-build and self-start in the first place. And they're just going to stay in their parents' basements. And it's sad because I've even seen that with people my age. Them like they're in their 30s and they're still flown around doing whatever, who knows what,
Yeah.
being sad. Where it's like the ones that have taken initiative, there's so many tools available now that you can multiply that so much faster than you ever could before.
Yeah. And what I would tell young people today is you have to be thinking, okay, what is a robot not going to be able to do for the next 20, 30 years? That's the career field you should go into. And what that translates into is trades. Like I'm telling all young people that I'm not all of them, but like a lot of them that are worried about like, hey man, I'm getting C's. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go to college. I'm like, don't worry about it, man. Go learn how to be a plumber. Go learn how to be an electrician because a lot of baby boomers are retiring and there's going to be this huge labor void. And like a lot of these younger generations, they don't know how to fix stuff. So they're going to have to pay people to do it. If you learn a trade, go work for somebody for a couple of years, and then, you have the communication skills that you picked up from doing sales, you can go start your own business and you're going to be a millionaire. You're going to be very, very successful with a marketable skill like that. But for so long in society, the trades have this stigma around them of like, ooh, blue collar, you're dumb, you're stupid. Sorry. It's the only reason you're there is because you didn't get A's and B's in college or in high school. And it's like, my message to young people is like, hey, don't stress about school. Like if you get a C or a D on that algebra 2 test, it's going to be all right, buddy. Like go learn a trade and then go stick it to the man. Like I think that honestly that's what's going to happen, because can a robot fix an HVAC system? Can a robot, fix a clogged drain? Probably, but not on the mainstream level yet.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a long time till that
Yeah.
happens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, dude, I think it's awesome. I love hearing from you. I think everything you're doing is great. So basically, if people want to where can they find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah,
follow
so
you?
my company is called Maverick Marketing. You just Google that on Instagram. It's a logo with bullhorns. So that's my company now, and I'm going to be doing podcasts like this with you, other people. Got a lot of friends in the industry, so we'll post updates on when those release.
That's awesome. And if you want to work with Neal, go do door to door and be good at it, and then hit him up. Now hit him up. He'll help you out.